Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Emax BabyHawk II Analog version. HD version, analog version. So with there being two different versions, the obvious choice between the two is whether you're going to be using Caddx Vista or DJI, or you're going to be using your traditional FPV goggles. There's really not a direct comparison because I don't think you choose between these two, but we'll go through the specs, we'll go out and fly it, and we'll talk about this as well as a few others in those 3.5-inch propped category. Running the Emax Eco 1404 3700 kV motors, and it does have the same all-in-one flight controller down in there that's 2 to 4S compatible and has a 25 amp ESC. Terrible hard to see, but right down in here is the TBS Unify Pro32 Nano VTX. That VTX is sending the image from the RunCam Racer. It weighs about 120 3/4 grams. I flew it on this Emax 4S 850 milliamp battery, which brings the weight up to almost 217.5 grams. Carbon fiber is still 4 millimeters thick. Cross braces also look to be 4 millimeters thick. Yeah, the top plate is still 2 millimeters thick. And it looks like it's 155 millimeters motor post or motor post. It came with 2 extra props, a support card, got some spare standoffs and screws, and stickers. I am not flying this with an HD camera, so that's something to take note of for those people that are looking to buy the analog version and then add, whether it's a Go2 or a Caddx Peanut or a naked GoPro or a regular GoPro. I'm not flying with any extra camera weight. This is just native. And this was actually one of the nicest days I've had in about 10 days. Unfortunately, when we had, I've talked about it on the channel. We had like days of rain come through and it has cooled off so much. It was supposed to be in the 60s today, but at least the last time I checked the weather, but it barely hit 50 today. And I don't know if it's just my body temperature has not caught up, but boy, I am not adjusting to those 50 degrees. My fingers get cold after one flight, so I have to keep coming in and out. That has nothing to do with this quad, although I did fly this quad in some of those conditions. And a close call, and a little correction, and no crash, and I just proceed on. That's the main reason why I brought this flight. I had a few other flights that I thought were more overall just kind of cleaner and smoother, but things get a little sporty from time to time. When I do those punch outs, and you probably do the same thing, I tend to ride them out up to a point, and then you bail. Either 100% bail or you just take some sort of a bail evasive maneuver. In that case, I was trying to ride it out and I kept thinking, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it. And nope, I just clipped the edge of that branch. But thankfully, it was at the extreme edge. Didn't really catch me and tumble. So as I said earlier in the video, I really don't think anybody would be choosing between the HD version and the analog version. I think it's more likely that you'll be choosing between analog versions of this and other 3.5-inch propped quads. Unfortunately, I've only flown 2 others that are analog. The others in the 3.5-inch category that I've flown are the DJI side, so I can't do a comparison one-to-one on everything across the board. So I would be comparing the Avant Quad's 3.5-inch quad and the Happy model Crux 35. Now the Crux 35 is the one that's different in this category entirely because it's so much lighter. So it's more appropriate for smaller spaces in my opinion, and it's also going to have longer flight times. There could be a question about the durability of the frame though, because of the reduced amount of carbon that we've got there. There could be an issue. I think the BabyHawk one is going to last a good long while. We had the HD version out there it's been running for several months now, and I haven't heard or read of too many complaints about the frame breaking or other electronic components breaking, so that should speak to itself to some degree, but you may want to ask around, maybe hit the Emax group, or if you're over on RC groups, hit the thread about the BabyHawk II HD, see if anyone's broken their frames. I'm sure somebody has, but usually it's one of those things that if you're not hearing about it with some relative frequency, it's not happening on crashes that people didn't expect to not break it. That's the best way I can point it. The Avio 35 from Avant Quads flies very similarly in the analog version to this. I think the one thing that it's got going for it is the fact that it's got removable arms. So if you did break an arm, you could replace that arm, whereas the Emax BabyHawk is it's got a single bottom plate. So if you break an arm, you replace the entire bottom plate. So more work to do that, and possibly more of a cost as well. But they have that 4 millimeter thick carbon on there, so hopefully that doesn't happen very often. There's not a mount that I have seen on Emax's site that you could use an HD camera, say a GoPro, naked GoPro, Go 2, something like that. But it does have the holes in the top of the frame that it seems like we could design a mount if there isn't one in already, on Thingiverse or somewhere out there that has someone surely designed a print for all sorts of different kinds of cameras that uses the front screw hole for the post, as well as the one that's just behind it. There's a parallel set of screw holes back there. And you're going to notice in some upcoming flights, I think, I haven't edited those flights, of course, but I do know that we have far more leaves in the yard now than we did during this flight. This flight was getting close to 2 weeks ago. Okay, we've come into land, 4 minutes and 28 seconds on that 850 milliamp 4S battery. It's Emax branded, pretty certain it's made by G&B, and battery in good shape, could have flown longer. So here are the three that I have that are analog that I can actually speak to their flight performance. And I've pretty much already done this, but I wanted to give you kind of the visual here. We've got the Happy Model Crux 35, of course. We've got the BabyHawk II Analog version, and we've got the Avio 35 over here. This is from Avant Quads, if you're not familiar. And as I mentioned, this has removable arms, and so you wouldn't even have to replace the wishbone of an arm. You just have to replace an arm because it's split right there in the center. Hopefully you can see that. So it's a single arm. It's not a wishbone. So you take out two screws, you replace that arm, and then you're back up in the air. Versus on the BabyHawk, it's a single bottom plate. So if you break anything on the bottom plate, you have to replace it unless you repair it. I know there's some people out there that do that. The Happy model is just so much lighter than the others that I enjoy it quite a bit, but I like a light, agile quad, and I still fly a lot of analog. So the way I feel about this one may not pertain to the overall feeling about comparing these different quads. Of course, this one has an Express LRS all-in-one board, which I think helps that feeling, that attached feeling of connectivity between the radio, your fingers, your brain, and what the quad is doing. Of course, these others you could put Express LRS in if you wanted to. But this one's super light, so you're going to get longer flight times. You get more quick response. But there's the possibility of frame breakage. I don't know how many of these are in the wild. I know there's been a few of them bought, but I think this is probably some of the better carbon Happy model is used. Anyways, I don't want to beat that point up. This one's very, very light. It's very, very agile. It's going to get you longer flight times. That's the genesis of this. But it could break for these others, at least in my opinion. That's what I would suspect. It's interesting on this one. I don't think let me grab. Yeah, they changed this. Hopefully you can see that they changed how they did this 3D print, that it's now got these bumpers. You can really tell from the bottom side here, these bumpers out here. That's an interesting point because on my original HD version, it just has the TPU print that comes straight down, no bumpers. So they added that. That's a good thought. As well as something else they did is they zipped. I did not do this. They zip tied down the battery lead off the front of the all-in-one flight controller. So that's something I approve on. And if you're not familiar with the channel, I talk about this on every quad. It seems like the reason why you want to have that zip tie in there is that if you have a battery ejection and it pulls on the battery lead, you have a fighting chance that it won't just rip the wire right off the pads. Whether it's a 4-in-1 ESC or an all-in-one like this, a zip tie gives us a touch more reliability in this staying intact. And they seem to add that to the analog version because, again, HD version doesn't have that. So they're coming along. Let me move these other quads out of here. I don't think I did a comparison outside of just the arms and that. I think the flight performance on these is very, very similar. I would be hard-pressed to... In a blind test, you might be able to tell if you got, really familiar with one of them a touch. But I think, generally speaking, if you didn't have them both, you probably couldn't tell them apart in flight if you did a blind sort of test. I do like this camera better. This is the Caddx Baby Ratel. The Racer camera is a nice camera because it's very low latency. So if you're flying fast and around a lot of trees, I think some people don't care for the coloration of the sky. You may want to go back and watch that, as well as just the overall contrast, I think, is a little high. Of course, we can change that. We can, plug it in and start to change some of our camera settings. But I think that's an overall picture of what I get from others as well as what I see. Whereas the Baby Ratel 2 is just it's one of my favorite cameras. It just is. It's small, it's light, and it's got a really good image, and it does good at nighttime. But this one's bottom mount for the battery. You could mount a battery up top. I wouldn't, because this top plate isn't very thick. And of course, the BabyHawk is top mounted, and they've got that post right here in order to support this top plate a little bit better. So that helps in a crash with that battery up there too, that it can take that and it has a post supporting it. I'm going to move these other two quads out of the way because I think we're done with them. I was a little surprised I only got 2 spare props. And I kind of looked around thinking that maybe I had just set them aside. But yeah, I think I only got 2 spare props. I guess it could have been a packing issue, so check your pack listing. I did have a couple of crashes with this. Hopefully I play them up in the corner over there. The only damage I have to report from those crashes is I did have one crash where the receiver came off of its foam tape because it is only stuck down there on the foam tape. Yeah, right down in there. It's just got a little piece of foam tape and that's it. And that had popped out and was kind of laying out here on the side. Thankfully, I didn't try to turtle mode or anything and then try to bring it back. I walked over to it and I grabbed it, and that's when I noticed that, yeah, receiver's laying out there. And all I did was just put it back in there, stick my little finger down in there and smush it back down. It stayed fine, but it was a pretty substantial crash. I do find that their battery strap is a little bit excessive as well. You know, yes, it can grab an 850 milliamp battery, but actually what it ends up looking like, where'd that battery go? Here, I'll grab it and put it in there just to give you a little bit of a visual on the battery strap and why I think it's excessive. It's a minor point. I mean, we get free battery straps from just about every place we order, so you've probably got another one. I don't know why I'm going over this, but you can see how it goes all the way down. So what I do in that case is I try to get as much pinched up in here as I can. So then my battery strap ends up looking like this. I mean, it holds on to it. It's a nice battery strap with silicone lining in it. It's just a bit long, at least for an 850. Of course, if you wanted a longer flight time out of this, or really most quads, you could go up a couple of sizes of batteries. There's always limits to your return, and of course, when you add more weight, it changes your flight performance, but if flight time is what you're going after, then you're giving up a little bit of agility and performance to get there. So that's a typical me complaint there about the battery strap. We do still have the plastic bit on the bottom, just like we did on the HD version, to protect ourselves from coming down a wet, dewy grass and shorting out our all-in-one board. So that's great. No changes there. It looks like really the only fundamental change outside of the analog issue is this has a different print, and where it has these little bumpers out here on the carbon fiber, which is a good idea because if you look at it straight down, you can see where if you were going straight and flat, that this would be the first points to hit. So maybe they learned something through the HD version about protecting these. Can't say. I'm speculating again there. I will point out that this receiver is D8. You shouldn't expect to get huge range out of that depending upon your flying environment. You probably get 100 meters. I wouldn't expect to get a lot more than that, but you might. It's really going to depend. But if you're flying out and around and behind stuff where it starts to get more challenging, you probably want to choose, one of the other protocol receivers to get yourself some additional reliable range, because this just isn't going to get you too far. It's fine for my space and for around my neighborhood, but much further than that, probably need to have a different receiver. As far as the price point goes, I see Race Day Quads is carrying this for $239.99 without a receiver. If you add Crossfire, it goes clear up to $279. If you use the FR Sky option, $259 versus the HD version, which looks like it's coming in at $359. So depending upon your receiver you get, it either costs you $100 more to go the HD route or $100 less to go the analog route if you're actually choosing between both, which I think would be quite rare. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.